Hey Marcel, very nice to meet you
Hi,
again.
nice to meet you too.
No, thank you so much for taking a few minutes for this. Before we kick things off, would you mind just briefly introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Marcel Cauli. I'm 56 years old, and I'm in the IT business for I think around 30 years. For the last 25 years, I served as a CEO of Extendas. And Extendas is a company that develops ERP back office solutions for the petrol market. And in Holland, we became a leader in the automation for petrol and car wash markets. And under my direction, Extenders supported daily operation of about 1,500 petrol stations. And I sold my shares in Extenders at the beginning of 2024, last year. And nowadays, I'm a startup coach, an investor in AI IT companies, and serve as a technology advisor in the petrol and mobility industry. Focus on new ideas, sustainability, using new technologies and AI. And what I've seen in I think the last 25 years is a sector which I worked on that changed rapidly. It was for years and years and years a very traditional business, and nowadays with all the new regulations regarding emissions and the new technologies evolving like AI and all the other stuff, the market changes rapidly. So I always been in a company that adapted those technologies in favor of the business. So yeah, that's more or less what I've been doing the last 25 years and what gives me energy at the moment.
No, fascinating. Thank you so much for the overview. The sort of petrol market industry more widely, with petrol stations as being very prominent and integrated into everyone's lives to be for someone like myself from the outset as one of the incumbent established industries that now is under pressure in some respects to adopt to, amongst others, new EV adoption, become more integrated from a connectivity standpoint. If we
hmm
start with an assessment of the industry right now, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that some of the players, the incumbents in the sort of petrol market face right now?
So I think that the biggest change those companies are facing is that in the past, over I think at least let's say 50 or maybe even 75 or 100 years, the petrol industry was very traditional. You had pumps, you had gasoline, and you had a car, and that was it. And everybody just worked with it and felt like it was okay dealing with petrol. And nowadays they are facing, first of all the new regulations. Everything has to be green, and so the dirty business of petrol has to become clean. That's one thing. And the other thing is that technology is evolving very, very quickly, and they have to also deal with those new technology issues. And then you have all the new all the new energy forms, hydrogen, EV cars. And I think those new energy forms also form a very big risk for the traditional industry because they sell fuel. So they have to fight a battle on multiple fronts. And I think those three things, new technologies, new energy forms, and also lowering emissions and cleaning off the dirty interpretation of the petrol business. Um, yeah, those things are the biggest risks that they are facing at the moment.
Let's use this the structure and dive a little bit deeper into every one of them, starting with the new technologies. What are some of these new technologies that the incumbents in the petrol industry need to be aware of or are implementing right now?
So what I think is that the new technologies not only hit the petrol market. I think that new technologies which are raising, and I'm talking especially about AI, is that they form both a risk for us all, but could also contribute to a better life. So it's not a risk, it's the way how we handle those new technologies. And I think if we are able as human beings of handling those new technologies in our favor, then we cannot talk about risks. We cannot talk about, we can talk about possibilities of really cleaning up all the mess we've made. So it's the way how we handle those new technologies. And it's not only, as I said, in the petrol business, it's everywhere. So, but I think in the petrol business, it's about being first. I mean, the development of AI goes so very quickly that if you are not able to adopt those new technologies into your business, someone else does. So you need to be aware of all the possibilities and the changes that are coming so rapidly towards you that if you're not able to adopt them, you will fail. So yeah, that's I think the biggest risk in the business, being able to adopt all those new technologies into your business.
Especially on the topic of AI, what are some of the main developments you see that are being implemented right now, and what is, from your now slightly removed perspective, what are some of the sort of possible trends, development trajectories that you see for a greener, more sustainable, more AI-enabled future of the petrol market?
So yeah, we have to switch to zero emission solutions, and car manufacturers are already doing that. So in the petrol industry, you also have to be able to make a switch into becoming a different kind of business, where you, as I said, traditionally be a company that sells fuel. You now have to become a multi-energy hub, offering EV chargers, hydrogen fueling, maybe also other kind of businesses that you haven't think of before. So there's a big transformation in the petrol industry going on. And you have to be able to adopt all those new technologies into your business. And most of those new technologies also come with AI. And if we talk about petrol business, we have a lot of technologies involved in the business, from pumping up gas to selling gas to selling other products than gas in petrol stations, like let's say cigarettes and chewing gums and coffee. So there are a lot of areas in the business where AI enters. And so you can talk about operational efficiency, back office automation. If you talk about operational efficiency and back office automation, you can, for example, say that you could use AI to do better forecasting of your inventory. You can use AI in your back office automation. You can do much better fuel forecast than you could do in the past. You can use AI to look into, let's for example say, past sales or maybe traffic data or weather predictions, and you could use that to buy gas at the right moment for the right price based on future predictions, where you use AI to do those predictions. You can do automatic ordering. At the moment, ordering works most of the times based on what you sold in the past from a specific product, giving you an idea of what the future sales will be. And with AI, you can extend those predictions in the future based, as I said, on much more data that you did in the past. So you can use that to not only buy products at the right time, but also use that to reduce waste and reduce cost. What you can also do is, for example, pricing. At the moment, you price your products mostly based on a margin you want to have on a specific product. So, for example, you buy a product for €1 and you want to have 40% margin, then the product will sell for 140. But using AI, you could just predict the best price based on a price elasticity model with much more parameters than you could use in a traditional ERP solution. So you could do dynamic pricing based on machine learning models, comparing also competitor pricing and a lot of other factors. So you could be able to predict the best price for that specific moment in time. You could also do personal pricing based on the demand of specific clients, or base prices of different petrol stations based off their competitors. So a lot of places in your business could use AI in their favor. You could also do, for example, the scheduling of your employees based on AI, where nowadays you just schedule them based on past models, and now with all the new possibilities, you can schedule them much better than you could do in the past. You could also do the process automation much better than you could do in the past. You could, for example, learn from more sensors in all the machines on, let's say, your forecourt, the cameras and the pumps and the price signs and all the other stuff, the cash registers, coffee machines, all the machines nowadays have sensors, and you can get information from those sensors, and then based on those sensors with AI learning models, you could better steer your petrol stations than you could do in the past. So I think every area in the industry, cleaning up toilets, scheduling services, all of the processes in your company could be done better, I think, using AI and machine learning technology.
No, thank you so much for the overview. That's really interesting. Just building on that, do you feel like the established players right now are ready for this level of innovation? And if so, where do you think this innovation that requires data engineering, data science, data analytics, intelligent automation capabilities, do you think this will come from within these organizations or from external partners like consulting firms, maybe in collaboration with some of the big tech partners that are quite popular at the minute?
So what I think is where I started, that technology, once it's not there and suddenly it's there. It's like there's a guy called Mo Gabdat. He was a former CEO of Google, and he says we're like the frog in the in the water that is already boiling, and the frog doesn't notice it. We're also in the petrol industry, but everywhere, but especially in the petrol industry, where the petrol industry is a very traditional business. Technology is advancing so quickly, and if you're not able to adopt, then suddenly you're in trouble. And in the petrol industry, everything in the past went slowly. Technology was adopted slowly, and let's say uh, the computerized post registers or cash registers took at least 10, 15 years to evolve to what they are now. And there was always time to adopt. So companies used their own people to slowly introduce new technology into the business. And nowadays, everything is going so fast that I think most of the companies are not able to adopt those new technologies so quickly. So they have to either transform into IT-like companies or get help from companies that are specialized in those businesses. And if they don't budgetize and prioritize those things and just focus on the traditional business as they have done 10, 20, 30 years, then they will get in trouble. So I think, to answer your questions, most of the companies are not able to do that themselves. So they need help. And if they don't, the other companies that have the money and have the wish to change will do, and you will.
The second big trend you refer to is around the energy transition. Really, the elephant in the room for the incumbents in the automotive manufacturing business is the transition to electric vehicles, which, just looking at current investments, regulation will come a little bit slower than initially expected or maybe hoped. But this is ongoing, and probably in another sort of 7, 8 years, EVs will be widely adopted in sort of most Central European markets on a much larger scale. What do you think this means for the current petrol industry, just on sort of the surface level? Of course, different type of fueling. How do you think these incumbents will need to change their operations and their business model to respond to that inevitable transformation?
Yeah, first of all, I think that the petrol industry was always an industry that was, let's say, the monopolist in delivering the energy for all the vehicles. And nowadays, with those new energy forms like EV and hydrogen, they were suddenly faced with other companies like than themselves delivering energy forms to vehicles. So those companies evolved from startups that let's say made charging poles or sold everything else needed for the EV market without thinking of the petrol industry. They were just startups creating a charging pole, and they didn't have to face all the legacy that petrol stations had. First of all, petrol stations have to adopt those new technologies into their business and see that it's not petrol anymore in the future. So first of all, they have to adopt those new technologies, and the advantage that those startups have, they have to either work together with those startups or maybe buy them or at least get all the knowledge that the startups made for themselves. So they have to integrate the new technology into their business. And as the advantage of most petrol companies is that they have a lot of money. So they need to spend a lot of money of adopting those new technologies and bringing them into their own business. And then once that technology is in their business, they have to change, I think, the mentality of the companies into the mentality that those startups already created from the start. So they have to be able to see that those new technology forms are the future, and that the traditional business they worked in for decades, they need to switch into something new and adopt it. If they are able to adopt it, and then they can, I think, have a future. And that future of those new energy forms will bring also a lot of new commercial opportunities for them. And I think that they have to transform from a traditional petrol station to a more energy hub-like company, delivering all the future energy forms, being either EV or hydrogen or whatever what in the future. And I think there are a lot of opportunities, and they have to grab them. And I think then there's a future for them. So yeah, regarding those new products, let's take, for example, EV. A lot could be done on a petrol station. You could, for example, say more than a traditional petrol station, you could say we could connect the onboard technology in cars together with the technology of the charging pole to the display of the car and say, okay, your car is charging. We have a bakery and we have a free coffee for you if you charge at least 10 kilowatts. So you could use also all the technology that is already there in the petrol station in the advantage for you and adopt those new technologies and combine them with the business you already have, and create then an advantage for you as a petrol station, and let it work in your favor.
Just sort of delving a little bit deeper into it, I found this super interesting, and you almost answered my sort of follow-up question to that a little bit, what the multi-energy hub could look like and what it would mean for the established players. Sort of a twofold question there is, I guess, one, around the types of players. So from my perspective, the current petrol industry seems to be reasonably consolidated, a little bit more in Germany and probably similar in the Netherlands, where there's really only sort of a handful of big players. Here in the UK, where I live now, we've got sort of the established players, and then most of the sort of supermarkets like Asda, Morrison's, etc. They offer sort of their own petrol stations, usually in combination with these superstores, is what they call them. From a sort of player landscape perspective, do you think that there will be more consolidation given the investments needed, etc., that you referred to, or do you think the sort of current landscape of players will be largely unaffected by that?
I don't know if I understood your question very good. So maybe could you please repeat what your question actually is? If the landscape changes with the coming of those new energy forms, is that what you ask?
Yeah, so basically, if you think that the players that operate these petrol stations right now, like your Shell, Esso, Aral petrol stations, etc., whether these will be the same companies that manage to transform themselves essentially successfully into these energy hubs,
So
or do you think this will be new players or
yeah.
a consolidated version of them?
So what I think is that you have different types of petrol stations. So you have the petrol stations in the city, In the small towns, petrol stations at, let's say, garages that in the past they had also a pump, and you have the big petrol stations on the highways. So I think that at least the petrol stations at the highways, they will stay the same companies, I think. Companies like Shell, Esso, BP, they have those positions at the highways, and I think they will not easily change into other hands. And they will be there in the future as well, because those highways will be used also in the future to travel from A to B. I think in the future in the cities and those small petrol stations, they will be at risk, because in the past you had to go to those places to refuel your car because they had the fuels you needed for your car. But in the future, you can charge your car everywhere, at McDonald's, at everywhere. There are charging poles everywhere in the city, so there's no need to go to a petrol station to refuel your car anymore. But if you're on the highway, the only place to go is the positions of those traditional petrol stations. So yeah, to answer your questions, I think that in the cities and in the towns in the future, if the petrol stations there will not adopt and change into something different, it will be difficult. But on the highways, I think they will expand, they will become bigger than they are now. They will sell not only fuels, but act more like energy hubs where people come together to refuel their car, but also maybe do their shopping, maybe because maybe they spend more time to refuel their car than they did in the past. So yeah, there's time to do other things. Like I said, shopping, maybe uh, a quick online call from an office where you also get coffee and a sandwich. So yeah, I think that those big companies that deliver energy will stay also in the future. They will adopt those new energy forms into their businesses, and they will grow in the positions where they are needed. And the small positions they have in the small towns will, I think, will diminish in the future.
It does make a lot of sense. Which leads me sort of to my last question. If imagine that you're speaking to one of the senior executives or multiple of them in charge for the data and AI strategy at these incumbent fuel station providers, what would be your top 3 recommendations to especially capitalize on some of these recent developments in the AI space that you referred to earlier in a sustainable way?
I think is the 3 things is use the new regulations in your favor, meet customer expectations using new technology, and grow as fast as you can before it's too late. I think those 3 things are the best things you could do as a petrol station owner at the moment.
No, thank you so much, Marcel. It's been a super insightful conversation. Really appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you too.